Australia has long been one of the most attractive destinations for international students. With world-class universities, a high quality of life, and opportunities for work during and after study, the country has consistently ranked among the top choices for students from Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. As of 2025, however, the landscape of studying in Australia is undergoing dramatic changes. Beginning in October 2025, new laws and policies are being introduced that will significantly alter the way student visas are issued, maintained, and extended. This shift comes after years of growing debate within Australia regarding migration, labour shortages, housing crises, and the impact of international students on the economy. While international students contribute billions of dollars annually to the education and housing sectors, policymakers have argued that the system was being misused, with student visas sometimes used as a backdoor pathway to permanent residency or low-skilled employment. The October 2025 reforms mark one of the biggest shake-ups in decades, with changes aimed at tightening requirements, reducing loopholes, and aligning migration with Australia's labour market needs. For students and families around the world, these changes could reshape both the dream and reality of studying in Australia. In this script, we will break down the history of Australia's student visa policies, detail the 2025 changes, analyse the political motivations, and explore the impact on students, families, employers, and the economy. Finally, we'll look at the long-term outlook and provide guidance on what students should do now. A brief history of Australia's student visa system. To understand the magnitude of the 2025 changes, it's important to step back and look at how Australia's student visa system has evolved. Australia first opened its doors widely to international students in the 1980s and 1990s, positioning itself as a global education hub. By the 2000s, the number of international students had skyrocketed, making education one of the country's top export industries, second only to natural resources like coal and iron ore. The student visa program has always had two intertwined goals: to provide world-class education and cultural exchange opportunities, to serve as a controlled pathway for skilled migration and economic contribution. However, issues soon emerged. Reports suggested that some education providers were operating as visa factories, offering low-quality courses that attracted students primarily seeking work rights and permanent residency. At the same time, student exploitation became a concern, with some employers underpaying foreign students. Over the past decade, Australia has repeatedly tweaked its student visa policies, tightening English language requirements, increasing financial checks, and linking post-study work rights to areas of skill shortage. But by 2024 to 2025, pressure on the housing market, rising unemployment among locals, and political debates around migration made international students a hot-button issue again. The October 2025 reforms represent the government's attempt to reset the balance between openness and control. What exactly changes in October 2025? The new policies coming into effect in October 2025 are comprehensive. Here's a breakdown. Higher English proficiency requirements minimum IELTS or equivalent band scores are being raised. Focus is on ensuring students can handle academic workloads and integrate better into the job market. Stricter financial proof: students must now show higher savings before arrival to demonstrate they can cover tuition and living costs. This is designed to prevent students from relying excessively on part-time jobs. Limited work rights during study work hours for international students will be capped more strictly. Exceptions will exist only for students in critical sectors like healthcare or aged care. Targeted post-study work visas: post-study work rights will be limited to graduates in areas of genuine skill shortage. Degrees in non-priority fields will no longer guarantee post-study work eligibility. Increased scrutiny of visa factories: some private colleges with a history of exploitation or poor quality programs may lose their right to enroll international students. Dependents and family members bringing dependents on student visas will now have tighter rules, with some courses not allowing dependents at all. Permanent residency pathways narrowed: the new system explicitly discourages students from treating study visas as a backdoor to PR, except in high-demand sectors. For many students, this means studying in Australia will require more preparation, higher costs, and a stronger long-term plan than ever before. Political motivations behind the reforms: why now? The timing of these reforms is no coincidence. Several political drivers explain the October 2025 changes. Housing crisis. Major Australian cities like Sydney and Melbourne have faced skyrocketing rents. Critics argue that international students contribute to housing shortages. Local employment pressure. With youth unemployment rising, some argue that international students working part-time are taking jobs from locals. Public sentiment on migration. Immigration has always been a divisive topic in Australia. Tightening student visas is a way for the government to show it is listening to concerns. Protecting reputation. Australia wants to maintain its brand as a top education destination. By cracking down on low-quality providers, the government hopes to reassure families that studying in Australia remains prestigious. Aligning with National Skills Strategy, the government is increasingly using the student visa system to directly support industries facing skill shortages, especially healthcare, engineering, IT, and education. In short, the October 2025 reforms are as much about politics and perception as they are about education and economics. Impact on international students. For students planning to study in Australia, the reforms mean big changes. Higher entry barriers. Many students from countries where English is not the first language may struggle with the tougher IELTS requirements. Increased costs. With higher financial proof requirements, only students from middle to high-income families may qualify. Reduced work opportunities. Those who hope to rely on part-time work for living costs will find it harder. Selective post-study opportunities. Graduates in business, humanities, or arts may face reduced chances of staying after graduation. Emotional stress. The uncertainty around visas and futures could create anxiety for international students already adapting to life in a new country. For some, this could mean rethinking Australia altogether, while for others, it means approaching their study journey with greater focus and discipline. Impact on skilled workers and families. The new rules will also affect families and skilled workers who plan to use student visas as part of their migration strategy. Spouses and dependents may find it harder to accompany students. Families who previously saw student visas as a stepping stone to PR will now face stricter limits. Skilled workers may benefit indirectly, as the government prioritizes pathways aligned with national shortages. This means the student visa will become less of a family migration tool and more of a pure education pathway. Social and psychological consequences beyond paperwork. The reforms have human consequences. Students may feel more isolated if they cannot bring family. Pressure to succeed academically will rise, given the higher stakes. Mental health issues may increase if students face financial struggles. Cultural diversity on campuses could decline if fewer students qualify. Australia must be careful. While protecting its systems, it risks damaging its reputation as a welcoming, multicultural nation. Economic impact on Australia. International education is Australia's third largest export industry, behind only resources like iron ore and coal. In 2023 to 2024, the sector generated over 40 billion Australian dollars annually, supported more than 250,000 jobs, and contributed massively to universities, housing markets, transportation, and retail. With the October 2025 visa reforms, the economic landscape will change dramatically. 1. Impact on universities. Reduced enrollments. Stricter visa rules mean fewer students will qualify. Universities, especially those outside Sydney and Melbourne, may see declining enrollments. Revenue drops. Many universities rely heavily on international student fees, which are often 2 to 3 times higher than domestic fees. A fall in numbers could lead to staff layoffs, program cuts, and reduced funding for research. Shift toward priority fields. Universities may begin reshaping their course offerings, cutting back on general degrees, like business or arts, and pushing programs in healthcare, engineering, IT, and teaching, areas aligned with government migration targets. 2. Impact on housing and rental markets. Rental prices. In cities like Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane, international students occupy tens of thousands of rental units. A reduction in incoming students may ease the housing crisis slightly, reducing demand for shared apartments and student housing. Regional impact. Smaller towns that have built economies around regional universities could suffer housing vacancies, loss of rental income, and local business slowdowns. 3. Impact on local businesses and jobs. Hospitality and retail. International students fill many part-time jobs in cafes, restaurants, and supermarkets. Limiting work rights means employers will need to find locals or pay higher wages. Transportation and tourism. Students contribute significantly through domestic travel, tourism, and use of public transport. A decline in numbers may hit these industries. Small business decline. Grocery stores, cultural restaurants, and services that cater specifically to student communities may see falling revenue. 4. Impact on national economy. Australia risks losing part of its competitive edge in education exports. If international students choose Canada, Germany, or Ireland instead, billions of dollars may shift abroad. However, the government's long-term plan is to create a quality over quantity system, a smaller but more specialized student intake that directly supports national labor shortages. In summary, while short-term economic pain is inevitable for universities, landlords, and local businesses, the government hopes to balance it with long-term gains in workforce planning. Global reactions and comparisons. Australia's October 2025 reforms do not exist in isolation. Around the world, countries are rethinking their approach to international students, balancing education exports with migration control. 1. Global student mobility trends. United Kingdom recently limited dependence on student visas and tightened post-study work options. Like Australia, the UK is prioritising high-demand sectors such as STEM and healthcare. Canada. In early 2025, Canada capped the number of student visas issued, citing housing shortages and misuse of the student visa system. Dependents are restricted for most courses. United States, still a leading destination, but with a highly competitive system and stricter immigration enforcement, the US attracts mainly high-performing academic students. Germany and Ireland, becoming more popular because of affordable tuition and relatively easier migration pathways. Many students may shift here as Australia and Canada tighten rules. 2. How students are reacting. Students are now shopping for countries, comparing tuition fees, work rights during study, post-study migration opportunities, overall safety and quality of life. Australia risks losing students to competitors if the reforms make it appear too restrictive or unwelcoming. 3. Reputation risks for Australia. Australia has marketed itself for decades as a friendly, multicultural, student-welcoming nation. If the reforms are perceived as hostile, it may damage its brand. However, by targeting low-quality visa factory providers, Australia may strengthen its reputation as a destination for serious students only. 4. Comparison with competitors. Canada versus Australia. Both are tightening, but Canada is still seen as more migration-friendly. UK versus Australia. UK offers a strong 2-year post-study work visa, though with stricter dependent rules. Germany versus Australia. Germany offers free or low-cost tuition, but requires German language proficiency for most programs. Australia's advantage: strong global ranking of universities, cultural diversity, and proximity to Asia. Ultimately, Australia is walking a tightrope. Stricter policies could protect its labour market but risk driving students to other countries. The October 2025 reforms will reshape international education in Australia for decades to come. Here's what students need to understand about the future landscape: smaller but more targeted intake. Australia will likely host fewer students overall, but those who come will be in priority fields like medicine, IT, engineering, and education. Migration linkages. The student visa will become less of a guaranteed pathway to permanent residency. Instead, students must align their courses with labour shortages to qualify. Focus on regional growth. The government may push more students to regional universities, offering incentives for studying outside major cities. Competition with other nations. As other countries also tighten policies, Australia will still remain a top destination, but students will be more strategic about where they go. 2. Guidance for students planning to study in Australia. Start preparing early. Secure higher IELTS or TOEFL scores, and prepare financial documents before applying. Choose your course wisely. Focus on healthcare, aged care, IT, data science, engineering, and teaching. These fields are in demand and linked to PR. Plan finances carefully. Don't rely on part-time jobs. Instead, calculate tuition and living costs in advance. Stay informed. Policies can change quickly. Always follow updates from the Australian government and reliable migration advisors. Focus on career goals. See Australia not just as a migration destination but as a place to gain skills, knowledge, and global experience. 3. Message to students: yes, the October 2025 reforms are tough, but they don't close the door completely. They simply mean that success in Australia will now require better planning, stronger preparation, and smarter decision-making. From October 2025, Australia's student visa system enters a new era. For some, the dream of studying in Australia will now be harder to achieve. But for those who prepare, choose wisely, and align their studies with Australia's future, the opportunities will remain as strong as ever. Stay informed, stay ready, and make smart choices. And before you go, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on student visas, scholarships, and migration news.